Chapter 4 Star of the Golden Cyclones. Melvin McCombs was always on the lookout for promising young female athletes. He was in charge of women's sports at Employers Casualty, a Dallas, Texas insurance firm. Because he had been in the Army once, everyone called him Colonel. Women's basketball was a popular spectator sport at the time, especially in the South and Midwest. Dozens of teams, sponsored by corporations, churches, and clubs, drew enthusiastic crowds as they competed in local and regional tournaments. Companies like Employers Casualty wanted to field winning teams, and they recruited the best players they could find. McCombs had heard about Babe Didrikson's triumphs as the high-scoring star of the Miss Royal Purples, and had traveled to Houston to see her in action. After the game, as Babe remembered, he introduced himself. "How would you like to play on a real big-time basketball team?" he asked. "Boy, would I," Babe replied. "Where?" "At the Employers Casualty Company in Dallas. We're getting ready to go into the Nationals in March." McCombs told Babe that he could offer her a clerical job with Employers Casualty and a spot on the Golden Cyclones, the company's championship basketball team. She'd have a chance to play against some of the finest women's teams in the country. It was a wonderful opportunity for a sports-minded girl like Babe, but since she was a minor and still in school, she would have to get her parents' permission. Babe's teammates were impressed, but she seemed to take McCombs' proposal in stride. "The rest of us were all real excited," Thelma Hughes recalled. "But after the game, up in our rooms at the Rice Hotel, Babe didn't seem to be thinking about the offer. She was too busy leaning out the window trying to see how many people she could spit at and hit on the head when they walked below on the sidewalk." Back home in Beaumont, Babe's parents had a family conference. Babe was 18 and in her last year of high school. If she took a job with Employers Casualty, she would have to drop out of school before graduation and move to Dallas. Colonel McCombs promised her $75 a month, a lot of money in that gloomy Depression year of 1930, when a skilled typist might make $50 a month. Babe would be able to help out her family. Her father made the decision. "That's why they had all come from Norway," Ole declared, "to give the kids everything that America could offer." "You go," he said, wagging his finger at Babe, and so she went to see her high school principal, E.C. McDonald. According to Babe, she was allowed to withdraw from school, play out the season with Employers Casualty, then return to Beaumont to take her high school graduation exams. 3 days later, Babe traveled with her father to Dallas, an overnight trip by train. "You never saw anybody more excited than I was that night at the railroad station in Beaumont," she wrote. "Here I was just a little old high school girl, wanting to be a big athlete, and now I was getting a chance." Colonel McCombs met them at the Dallas station in his yellow Cadillac and drove them to the offices of Employers Casualty, where Babe met the young women who would be her teammates. "I'd never seen so many large girls, large feet and large hands," she wrote. "They were really husky." Most of the women worked in McCombs' department, accident and cyclone insurance for farmers and ranchers. That's why the company's teams were called the Golden Cyclones. Babe arrived in Dallas on the morning of February 18, 1930. That night, she played her first game for the Golden Cyclones against the Sun Oil Company team, the defending national champions. The Oilers had heard about Babe and meant to put her in her place. They started hitting me that night, and they kept it up the whole season, she wrote. If one guard fouled out against me, they'd send in another one. But I broke away for my share of shots. The Golden Cyclones won that game 48-18, and Babe was high scorer with 14 points. From then on, she starred for the Golden Cyclones in game after game. She wore number 7, the same number she'd worn in high school, made her uniform over to fit like a glove, and was almost always her team's high scorer. In an era when women's basketball was played under different rules and 20 points was a respectable total for an entire team, Babe often scored 30 or more points a game. Her office duties, meanwhile, were not very demanding. She learned to type on the job, and she had plenty of time to practice basketball. Women's sports and employers' casualty were designed to gain favorable publicity and goodwill, and the company did everything possible to promote winning teams. The Golden Cyclones enjoyed first-class equipment, sleek orange uniforms, and expert coaching. The players were some of the best in the country. Like Babe, they had been hired mainly for their athletic skills. Babe rented a $5 a month room in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood where her teammates also lived. They all ate at the home of Danny Williams, the Golden Cyclones' assistant coach. His wife did the cooking. She was a good cook, Babe wrote. We paid 15 cents for breakfast and 35 cents for dinner. Babe got along very well on her salary. She sent $45 a month home to her parents. After paying for her room and meals, she had $10 a month to call her own. She had been playing with the Golden Cyclones for just 3 weeks when she wrote to Tiny Scurlock, sports editor of the Beaumont Journal and husband of Ruth Scurlock, Babe's English teacher. Dear Tiny, boy, I am still knocking them cold. We played the Western Union Tuesday night and beat them 62-9. Well, to be frank with you, I'm going to make All-American because I have got my mind set on that. That winter, the Golden Cyclones made it to the National Women's Basketball Championships in Wichita, Kansas, sponsored by the Amateur Athletic Union, AAU. The Cyclones swept through to the finals, then lost the championship to Sun Oil by a single point. True to her prediction, Babe was chosen All-American forward. Have gotten a lot of write-ups from all the leading newspapers in the South, she wrote to Tiny Scurlock. I have a whole lot of fans now. Some of those fans were recruiters from rival companies who wanted to lure Babe away from employers' casualty. They offered higher pay and better benefits if she would play for their teams, but she had a good reason to stay with employers' casualty. Colonel McCombs was organizing a women's track and field team, and the prospect of competing in a challenging new sport was so tempting, Babe didn't want to think about changing jobs. After the AAU basketball tournament in Wichita, she went home and finished up at Beaumont High. Then she began training for her first track and field meet. Babe had never seen a track meet until Colonel McCombs took her out to Lakeside Park in Dallas one Saturday afternoon so she could watch the runners, jumpers, throwers, and hurdlers. Those hurdles reminded me of all the hedge jumping I'd done back home, she wrote. I liked the looks of that event better than almost anything else.